So um, let's actually clear this up and exit. So I'll actually log into MySQL again. Yeah, so I'll say use information schema, and now we'll actually be looking at how to pull in the database information or the metadata information for procedures. So for that we will use a table called routines, and in the routines we'll actually use this SQL, which is select routine schema, routine name, routine type, routine body, and definition from routines. So yeah, so the other day I actually was saying that it is common to actually table space the singular format of the table to its columns. So that is one way of uh, schema, like the way of defining the schema. I personally would actually prefer just schema, name, type, body, and definition, given that they are all part of the routines table. But again, it pretty much depends on the architecture that you go into. So by doing that, we actually would be pulling out all the like just the limited information that we want to deal with. Okay, and obviously the other way is to use show procedure status, which gives us close to the same information, except that it wouldn't give us the definition of the routine, okay, or definition of the procedure. So now that we have this part out, let's actually get the definition for uh, procedure for one of these procs. Let's say get total info. Huh. Yeah, so we'll also have to make sure that we are in the same database, because procedures are tied to a database. So we'll have to go into the database, and then we'll have to say show create procedure name. So at that point, nice, we actually are getting the information of that procedure. Now we understand that this is the way we create a procedure. Let's actually make it a little more interesting and say that rather than giving in a lot of information, or like rather than getting all the information out, let's actually do a targeted search. Okay, so the targeted search is going to be where we actually hang on for 1 second. What? Pooja, give me 1 second.
Sure.
Okay, so let's actually do a targeted search where we would see what is the name of the table. Oh, it's a join. Okay, so let's actually copy this whole query. Uh, okay, copy. So why is my right click? Okay, that is what. Where so it's order by, right? So we shouldn't use where. We should use having. Say let's actually pull people out by user ID equal to 1. Okay, so it says, oh, hang on, what? having doesn't work, but we're using audible. Oh, you know what? I know why. So let's say you having u dot name is equal to Joe. Oh, it doesn't work either. Oh, u dot name doesn't exist. Right, right. Okay. Let's try f name. So that did not work. Uh, okay. See where I don't think where would work here. Yeah, where is not supposed to work because so it looks like having would only work if we have an aggregate function. So let's actually try that. Select star from users group by ID. Okay, having ID is equal to 1. See, it actually works here. We didn't even have what is it? We didn't have a specific aggregate function. Hey Munjal, how are you, man?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Uh, good, good. Quick question. So, do you have any questions with anything that you've done in the last week?
No, I started him and I'm doing pretty good for now.
Okay, cool. So, let's actually go back to this query. So, we're saying having ID is equal to 1. Okay, so let's actually do this. Let's create a new procedure where we would say we want to group by ID, and we will say that we want to pass in a certain group ID, or again we can even say this where you would say where ID is equal to 1. Okay, so let's actually create that simple proc very quickly, and let's say delimiter, and then we'll say create procedure. Procedure name get user by ID. Okay, and we would say in ID int. Okay, so let me actually open up the MySQL documentation real quick. Show up. Oh, um, oh yeah, MySQL documentation. Create procedure. Okay, so we say create procedure name. Okay, so proc parameter would be in parameter name. Okay, which would be the name of the parameter, and the type is int. Okay, fair enough. So now, yeah, then it has to be routine body. Perfect. So seems right. Begin. Select star from users where ID is equal to ID. Okay. We'll say end, and here we'll have to given the delimiter. Okay, and then again we'll have to override the buffer delimiter, and I've spelled that wrong with the original one. Now let's actually call the procedure. For calling a procedure, what do? It's a call procedure name, which would be get user by ID, and we'll pass in 1. So let's see if that works. Interesting. So we actually are getting all the users. Hmm, that's funny. So what happened here? So we are passing in one, which is an integer, and then here we are looking for the ID. So let's actually drop this one, get user by ID. For that we'll say drop procedure get user by ID. Okay, it's dropped. So again, let's say delimiter is this. Say create procedure get user by ID in would be the parameter that's going in. And here let's actually call this user ID and uh, just a guess here, stuff from users where let's actually say u, let's table space it, and we'll say user ID. Okay, and let's end it here, and let's say delimiter is okay. So it's again call get user by ID. Okay, so this time it actually worked. So actually do that with one, see if that works. Okay, so one also works. Let's do it with three. Three works. Okay, four. Perfect. We do not get any data. Nice. So let's actually scroll up. So it looks like the first time when I actually passed the data in, it it kind of seems like there was a confusion between because I was not actually namespacing anything. The query might, I mean, I'm not sure. The query might have thought that uh, the ID that I'm passing in was being overridden by the ID that was coming out of the table. Okay, so one thing that we'll have to kind of understand is how the execution actually happens. So what is happening here? So can you all hear me? Looks like my
Yes, I
computer is frozen. Damn. Let's actually try this. See, I actually have around 600 or 550 MB of RAM, which is inactive. So let me actually clear it up. Okay, so what happens here? Okay, so I have around 700 MB. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now that I have enough memory, let's actually again. Uh, I actually do not. Oh man. So I actually have a lot of memory. So in my VirtualBox is around 1.5 gigs. So what is the problem? Okay, so I have 241 ports, 23 threads. So let's actually close this up. My CPU is not that bad. Yeah, see, only 11%. And it's 80% idle. So why is this thing hung? Give me 1 minute, guys. Sorry about this. Oh, okay. Stuff. Okay. So let's actually do show create procedure and so get user by ID. Okay. So what we have here is this is the this is the body that we've used, and we have made it very simple. All we are doing here is we are actually passing in some data. Okay, we are actually passing in the user ID. Okay, and then we are actually saying that uh, get me all the users where the ID is equal to the user ID that I'm passing in. Okay, yeah. So what we were talking about was how like why was the earlier procedure that was failing. So my guess is that there are different ways uh, with which a query is executed based on the database engine. Okay, so say for like SQL server, the query goes from right to left. I mean, I'm pretty sure it is the same with what is it with uh, MySQL too. And the good part about that is we would actually be hitting the where first. Okay, based on what table we are looking for. But in the earlier case, since there was ambiguity between the ID that I was actually passing in and the ID that I actually am comparing the input value to, it looks like it was being overridden by the ID that was being selected from the table. But to solve that problem, what I had to do was to give my table an alias. Okay, give my table an alias and make sure that the ambiguity was cleared. Okay, so now this is the way we'll actually create a procedure for oh yeah, this is how we'll actually create a procedure where we can actually pass in an input parameter. Now let's actually look at a very simple uh, procedure where we'll actually set a variable out. Okay, uh, I mean this is something that is not really done, but it's something where we can it's just like a good to know. I mean, people really do not use this kind of a thing. I mean, for the simple reason that we already have functions that can actually do a better job at this one. But it's always good to have an idea as to how this is done. So let's say create procedure. Would say I don't know output info. Okay, and we can say out. So let me quickly take a look at that thing again. I don't have looks like I've actually closed it up. MySQL. Yeah, so it has to be create, yeah, procedure name, and then we'll actually say out. We'll have to give in the parameter name and type, and we'll have to give in the body. Okay, makes sense. So let's check out. Say welcome message and we'll say so varchar 10. No, let's actually make it 50. Again we'll say begin, and since we are just setting some data, we just say set welcome message is equal to you. I don't know, you are welcome. Let's say end with the delimiter. So delimiter semicolon. So we're actually overwriting the buffer delimiter. Now let's say call output info. Let's see what happens. Incorrect number of so it looks like we have to declare we might have to declare a variable and actually send the data out. For some reason I don't think variables exist outside the so incorrect number of arguments, expected one got 0. So let's actually do this. Call in output info. Let's say so. So that did not work either. Out or in out argument 1 is not a variable or new pseudo variable. What the hell do you want? Okay, so let's say call. Oh boy. Incorrect number of arguments of procedure. Online push dot output info. So let's actually look it up. That's it. So all we'll say is we'll say at the rate that in. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, so let's actually do that. Call output info. We actually are creating a random variable. Let's say welcome message, and then we'll have to say select at the rate welcome message. See, that is how it's done. Okay, so yeah, I mean, when in doubt, take a look at the documentation. Okay, let's actually drop the procedure and rework through the whole process. Output info. Okay, let's clear the screen. So let's say delimiter is slash slash. Yeah, I mean, see again, the reason that I'm actually using slash slash today is just to give you all an example that dollar dollar is not the delimiter. We can actually use anything, but just make sure that it is distinct and is not a common thing. Okay, so let's say that, and then we'll say create procedure. Yeah, procedure name be print welcome message. Let's say out welcome message aka 50. Let's say begin. Let's say set is to set a message, like set something to the variable. Welcome message is equal to I don't know, welcome to stored procs in MySQL. So end. Now yeah, let us override the delimiter. Let's say call print welcome message and we are declaring a random variable, and let's actually select the variable so that we can output the data. It says welcome to stored procs in MySQL. So now let's actually take a look at the stored procs that we have created today. Okay, this is stored procedure, show procedure status. Yeah. So these are the two procedures that we've created: get user by ID, and we are also printing a welcome message. At this point, let me ask you all if there are any questions. No questions? Very good. Now we've actually seen a few things. Um the first thing was to the database installation part. The second thing was to run queries, and the third thing was to create procedures. Okay, the types of procedures that we have created are the first being we've actually built basic procedures without any input information. Then we have actually built procedures where we had to input information to perform a targeted search. And third, we actually used uh, used a dummy local variable to print some data out or set some data. Because one example for this would be uh, check if user exists. Okay, so I kind of made made the output parameters to actually look like they do not have a real use. But let's actually create another output. Create another procedure with an output parameter which would actually give us the user information. If the user exists. Okay, so let's say dot delimiter is that. Let's say create procedure check if user exists. Okay, and we'll say out. Okay, so let's actually make it a little more interesting. Let's actually say we are going to pass multiple parameters. Okay, the first one, so let's actually has to be the user ID that you're passing in, and the second one would be an output parameter that will return from the database server. So this is more of a real-time example where we are saying that where we are actually saying that take the id in and send me the data out if the id exists. So for that we would say in user id int out is exists. Okay, well, let's actually make it in int. Okay, so let me, yeah, I think this is right. Let's actually say begin, and let's say select u dot star from users u, where u dot id is equal to user id. Okay, or let's actually make it a little more interesting. So let's say set is exists is equal to the count of the number of users with that user id. Okay, so let's see if that works. Okay, and obviously we would actually set the data, and then let's end it here. Eh, there we go. So looks like we have a problem. Oh, you know what? I should actually be more specific. So I cannot do a star. I'll have to do a dot column name. So let's actually go in here. Okay, delimiter is that one. Create procedure. Check if user exists. The parameter going in is user ID, which is an integer. Parameter coming out is either a 1 or 0. Okay, to say that, so if it is 1 at that point, I mean it's not a 1 or 0. Hang on, yeah, it could be 0 or anything other than 0, because if it is a 0, it means that there are no users. But if it is something other than 0, it means that either a single user exists with that ID or multiple users exist with that ID. And with the way we've actually set up the schema, there can only be a single user, given that we have a primary key index on the table. But it's always important for you all to understand that there can be, if the index wasn't there, or if the unique index constraint wasn't there via the primary index, there can be multiple rows or multiple users with that ID. Okay, so let's actually begin the procedure, and let's say set is exists, set the output variable is equal to select u dot id from, no, select count, so select the number of people with that id from users u, where u dot id is equal to user id. Okay, so once we set it, we can actually end the proc. Oh man, so what's happening here? Let's actually run the query and see what happens. Select count u dot id from users u, where u dot id is equal to 1. Oh, so see, so this is actually working here, but for some reason it's not working in the stored proc. Oh, you know what? I should actually treat that as a subquery. Okay. So create procedure, check if user exists in user ID and out is exists and begin set is exists is equal to select count of u dot id uh, from users u, where u dot id is equal to user id. Okay, let's end it here. Okay, awesome, that worked this time. Now let's actually say, let's actually modify the delimiter back to semicolon. Let's say call, yeah, call procedure, which is check if user exists, and we are actually going to pass in 1 for the user ID, and then we are going to say is exists. Hang on, what? Oh, it says users. Okay, so that's wrong. So I mean the name is wrong because we are checking for one user, but let's actually ignore that and go forward. So now it actually has inputted the information. Now let's actually select is exists. So this one should actually say 1. Okay, nice, because we are actually passing in the id as 1, so it says 1, which is right. Let's actually use the same thing here again. Let's actually pass in 10. Okay, and let's say select at the rate is exists, and it says 0. Voila, there we go. So this is how we will actually use a procedure where we have multiple arguments. Okay, so we've actually pretty much seen, I'm guessing, all kinds of information where we actually are using a procedure um, without without any parameters. Then we are actually using with a single input parameter. Then we saw a procedure with a single output parameter, and then we have also seen another another procedure with multiple parameters, which are both in and out. At this point, again, let me ask you all if there are any questions. And are you all getting an idea of why we are discussing different types of procedures? Yes, no, all right.
It's fine, Sai.
Okay. So, um, let's actually get out of the. So, these are pretty much all the procedures that we have to work with. Now, now we have done a good amount of MySQL work inside the MySQL console. Okay, now let's get out of the console and put this data to some use. Okay, so now let's go to www. Um, so looks like something's changed. Uh, okay. Uh, okay. Okay, so let's actually get into www. So looks like for some reason I've moved out all my training folders from this one. So let me move them back in. Let's say backup, um, training in here. Okay, sudo bash. Let's say backup training in here. So let's get into training and see what do we have in there. Okay, so we have all the required information. Okay. Oh, by the way, I actually wanted you all to show you the editor that I actually was going to suggest if you all want to try an editor. So it's called Sublime Text. Okay, so Sublime Text is a pretty cool text editor. So if you all want to use it, so let's actually get it into the
Uh,
desktop.
how can I install it?
Yeah, I'll actually tell you all. So test.php. So in here, it's a little it's it's probably better looking when compared to the the terminal. I mean, mainly if you all want to actually use any kind of function, say str. Yeah, see, there we go. So we can actually get this kind of functionality with Sublime Text. So to answer your question, I actually installed it somehow, which we'll actually figure out how. So let's say install Sublime. So what version of Ubuntu are you using, or both of you?
I think I'm using 11.01.
So it has to be 10. Okay. So 11 Sublime Text, text Ubuntu 11.10. See, nice. So I'll actually send you all this thing. It's very simple. Okay. But I still would recommend you all to use what is it? To use terminal. Given that you all would only have a terminal to work with uh, on a server, and trust me, you all would. I mean, you all might have to work on a server. So keep that in mind. Okay. But again, Sublime Text actually provides support for different types of files. So if I actually want to create mm, say like a JavaScript file, okay, save as test.js desktop. Okay, so I can actually say var is equal to sub, and then I'll say console.log var, and then I can also say function, or I could say dollar document dot ready functions, and I can actually write in callbacks and do all kinds of fancy stuff. I mean, again, and I can say dollar dot hash hash click, or I'll say button send as an example. So I'm actually adding a callback to a button. Say dot click, I'll say function, here's the callback. I will actually do that. Yeah, see? So it actually looks a little more clear, and I'm guessing that it also adds. Oh, we don't have jQuery support in here. That's sad. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure there should be some kind of a plugin out there that provides. So let's actually look it up real quick. jQuery support IntelliSense for Sublime. Yeah, see, is there a smart IntelliSense thing? Yeah, so here's that package. Yeah, here's that package. Okay, GitHub repo to provide IntelliSense for jQuery, and I mean obviously it has to be written in Python. But yeah, never mind. So I'll actually send you all this link too. So if you all want jQuery IntelliSense, you all can use this one. I'll probably try this today to see how hard it is to get the IntelliSense. But yeah, long story short, Sublime Text is a good text editor, and if you all get bored of Terminal or Terminator, use that thing. Okay. Now the main thing that I actually wanted to talk to you all today. Now that we have covered basics of MySQL, say like running a query and running a stored proc uh, in MySQL, let's actually do the or like bridge the gap between the web application and the database. Okay, because for any successful web application to have to contain dynamic data, we always would need a connection to a persistent data storage, be it a caching system, be it a file server, or be it a database. So today let's actually create say like a let's actually take a look at a bunch of examples to work with, which actually connect to the database and fetch the data. Okay, so let's say db, let's call it db manipulations. Yeah, that's good. Let's say cd change directory into that one. Perfect. Now let's actually, is there a question? No. So let's actually open up a basic I won't say hello world, but basic php file. Okay, to connect to the database, connect to the database, and let's go from there. Okay, so the first thing obviously is to understand how would php connect to the database. Okay, I mean, see, this might actually come across to be basic stuff, but this is the kind of basic stuff that we have to understand. Okay, so let's actually look at all the php modules that are installed. Okay, so these are all the modules. Now let's actually look for MySQL. Okay, so the way PHP connects to MySQL. Okay, I mean, because PHP is a different thing, Apache is a different thing, and MySQL is a different thing. So there are three different components, okay, which actually are coming together to form a powerful stack. For forming a stack, there has to be some kind of connectivity, okay, obviously. So since Apache, I'm not sure if Apache can directly connect to MySQL, but in this case, let us assume that Apache cannot connect to MySQL. So Apache has to connect to PHP, and PHP has to connect to MySQL. And the way PHP connects to MySQL is by using these packages, okay, MySQL, MySQLi, and pd underscore MySQL package, okay, or module, like it is called. So these are the three modules that are required to connect to MySQL. Okay. Now that we have, oops, yeah, now that we have all the required modules to
Sai, can you back up for a minute
back up to where?
to where you said you need three packages to connect to MySQL, but you need to install them?
Yeah, yeah.
So how do you do that? GRAP?
No, no. So remember, we actually have already used task cell, right? So let's actually open up task cell once, and let's actually say sudo bash. So task cell install lamp server. Or let's actually say dkpg task lamp server.
What is DKPG, you know?
Uh, dpkg. Huh?
What is DPKG, you know?
So dpkg is a way you can actually get the information of a given package. Okay, so if I say dpkg php, hang on, so something's wrong, or php my admin, see, something's actually wrong, because there is a way we can actually find out information about installed package. Dpkg, let's say help. Yeah, because that is how we'll actually find the information about an installed package. Okay, so install r, okay, so let's say dp minus l. So this gives us all the packages that are installed in here. So now let's actually clear this up, and let's actually grep for php in here. Okay, yeah, so this is how we'll actually take a look at it. And here, if we see, we have four different packages that are installed for dkp for php 5. Okay, and one of them is php 5 mysql. Okay, and I mean, again, the reason that I actually am showing you this part is for you all to understand that Unix isn't a ghost. Unix in itself is another operating system, and Microsoft has very cleverly written GUI interfaces to dumb down the experience for uh, other users. Okay, uh, so real time, they are also doing something like this. When you actually go to say like a program manager, or say like a package manager inside MySQL, no, Microsoft Windows. Okay, so long story short, dkpg minus l would actually show you all the minus l would show you all the packages that are installed. And once you are here, you can actually search for MySQL. So search for all the packages that are for in here for PHP, or you can even search for MySQL to see what are all the MySQL packages. Okay, so you have a MySQL client which provides the client binaries so that we can log in via a MySQL console, and then we obviously would need the server binaries to actually run the MySQL server, right? Because when we do MySQL minus u root minus p, okay, admin, this becomes the client interface. Okay, this is the client interface. But when I actually say select star from users, it won't work obviously, because okay, so let's actually Yeah, so when I'm running this query, for example, okay, it has to hit a so I mean, even before it hits a database, it has to hit a database server. Okay, so that server is being installed using this package. Okay, and just to verify, okay, you all can actually see that this is the, so this is the server binary, or this is the package binary, while this is the package component name. And here we can actually more compare it with this one, which has the same component name. Okay, so let's scroll up for a little bit, and let's actually take a look at all the other MySQL things. Okay, so again, I mean, like PHP common, MySQL common, or Python common, these are the common required files, okay, for any kind of a software. So I mean, like here they've actually mentioned the example of a conf file for MySQL. Okay, and yeah, so here libmysql is the client library. Okay, this is the MySQL connectivity for Perl, and so on. Okay, uh, hang on. So did I answer your question, by the way, Pooja?
You did, you did.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, yeah. So this is the kind of Linux stuff that separates you from a regular jack. Okay, because the regular people out there who say that they know PHP are the people who mug up stuff from W3 schools and come out. But for a real PHP guy, it's not just PHP, it's about the whole architectural idea. Okay, so it has to be PHP, has to be MySQL, has to be HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and most importantly, you all should have a nice idea about Linux. And when I say nice idea, you all just have to be comfortable with Linux. Nothing hi-fi. Nobody would ask you for any kind of admin stuff. Okay, but again, if you have any admin stuff, it's a plus, right? It's obviously a plus. Yeah, so now we understand that we have PHP, we understand that we have a MySQL server, we also understand how do we connect from PHP to MySQL, and that is via the connectivity libraries. Now for every library there are some exposed methods that we'll have to use. Okay, the first method that we would use is MySQL connect. Okay, the second method that we'll use is MySQL select DB. Okay, the third method is going to be MySQL query, and the last method is going to be, I won't say last, there's another one. So the fourth set of methods, this is not single but multiple, would be MySQL fetch star. Okay, so we can fetch an object, we can fetch an association, or we can fetch an array, and we'll look into it in a detail. And the last one obviously is going to be to close the resource. Okay, so we are opening a resource here because MySQL is different from PHP. So whenever we are actually making a call, making a call to the to open a connection, we actually are opening up a resource. Technically speaking, we are opening up a port. Okay, yeah. So now we are talking about ports. Let's actually also uh, take a look at, yeah. So the MySQL server, keep in mind, runs on a default port of 3306. Okay, 3306. So on a local host, this is the particular port that we'll have to look for if something is screwed up with MySQL. Okay, yeah. So now let's actually begin with MySQL connect. So let's say dollar connection, since it's a resource and we'll have to reuse the resource, we'll let us assign it to a variable is equal to MySQL connect, and it actually takes the it actually takes, yeah, um, the server name, the username, and the password. Okay, let's actually double check that that is the case. MySQL connect. Yeah, so the first thing is server, second thing is username, the third thing is a password. Perfect. Okay, yeah. So we would say if no, if there is no connection, okay, at that point we're screwed. So we would say we can actually write up a logger API which would say log the error that the MySQL server is down, and then we can also write an email API which would say email the server admin about the MySQL server. Okay, but since we are not going to do any of those, we would just say server is down and let us exit out of the application. Okay, but assuming that there is a connection, we will use MySQL. We'll actually select a database. Select DB. So let's actually take a look at that. I guess it's the database name and the resource. Online purchases and the connection. Mm, mm. And the last one, I'm sorry, last one. The third one is going to be, so now we have actually selected the database. Now let's say dollar SQL is equal to select star from users. Let's keep it simple. Okay, and then we'll say that dollar result is equal to MySQL query dollar SQL. So let me quickly check if we'll have to pass in the resource here. MySQL query. Yeah, so we'll have to pass in the resource. And since we are here, let's also look for MySQL select DB. Yeah, so even for DB, we'll have to pass in the resource. Nice. Okay. MySQL SQL and we'll pass in the DB. Now that we have a database, yeah, now that we have the resource opened up for the query, let's actually see that if result is true, okay, which means that if it is not null, let us say MySQL. Okay, so we'll have to use a while loop here. The reason for that is what MySQL fetch array or MySQL fetch object or MySQL fetch association would do is it actually iterates through the result and fetches the data out. Okay, let's actually see how that's done. So we'll say dollar uh, online. No, since we're getting users, so let's say dollar user is equal to MySQL fetch object, because yeah, let's actually say object from the result. Okay. Okay, I screwed it up. So let's say let's go back one step. Yeah, this is better. And we would say yeah, let's just say print recursively the object that we are retrieving. And finally we'll say MySQL close dollar connection. Yeah, see again MySQL close would only take the resource that we have opened up. Okay, so now yeah, so now let's actually run this file and see what happens. uh, since we really have nothing to see, unless the like we would only be looking at the data, so let's not get to the browser. Let's run the file from the terminal. Let's get into db manipulations. Okay, let's say php. Okay, sweet. So this is how we'll actually be printing the data. So again, if we actually want to make it a little more evident, okay, we'll say echo, yeah, obviously echo dollar user. Since it's an object, we'll use the arrow parameter id, and let's concatenate it with first name and last name. Hang on, so when I look at this data, is it, I mean, is it truncating my data, or do I just have this in the database? So let's actually take a look at it. Select star from users. Okay, so it's not concatenating. So it's actually, I mean, it's not truncating. This is the address. So pretty small address. But let's actually continue. Exit and clear it up. Yeah, and let's say last name, and we'll have to use the next line character because we are using a console, because we are using the console. Okay, so this would actually add, I think it'll be a little too much. And no, it should be fine. Let's actually run this. Yeah, it's better, right? So we have John Doe, the second guy, and the third guy. Okay, so this is how we would actually fetch the information from a database. So let me quickly ask you all if there are any questions. Okay.
So basically, in connection, you gave localhost and root and admin, right?
Yeah.
If you're connecting to some external database or a server in the same network, what do you do?
We would give the we would actually change it with this. So excuse me, assuming that it's this one, H3V server 01. Okay, so this is one of my servers that I work on. So at that point, I'll actually connect it to
They have a specified name for each server, ID. What
uh,
is it? What is the number called? ID or name or what? Server name or?
yeah, that becomes the server name.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's actually try that. Let's put localhost in here. Okay, so let's actually, I mean, again, this would actually be a TCP call. Okay, so the way we'll actually make a TCP call would be, let's actually ping. Okay, let's ping localhost. So the first thing would be this part. Okay, so as soon as we ping, just like a HTTP ping, we'll actually retrieve the, not we, but MySQL Connect would actually retrieve the IP address. Okay, then okay, then what what it would do is to look for a port. The port would be 3306. Okay, and it would directly connect to that port unless we specifically mention or override a port. Okay, so the way we would override the port would be, we would say h3v server 01 colon 3308 as an example. Okay, so that is how we would actually overwrite something. Or yeah, that is how we should overwrite it. Let me double check it on over here. Scroll. MySQL connect. Yeah, that is how we should connect. Given that, yeah, see, given that it only takes the server parameter. Yeah, so oh yeah, over here it can also include the port name or port number. Sorry. Okay, okay, and yeah, I mean this is a little more complex concept of sock connecting to a socket. But I mean, long story short, what we can use is, since it is already on 3306, we'll just use localhost. But there are cases where we actually are coming up with, say, like a complex architecture where we want one port to be the master and the other port to be what is it, the other port to be a slave. Okay, that point what we can do is we can say uh, let's say if dollar data call is read. Okay, at that point connect to slave. Okay, else connect to master. Okay, and in our config file. Okay, say say like we have a local config file. Okay, in that config file we would say dollar server is equal to h3v server 01. Let's say 3308 is our slave. Okay, and um, dollar server 3306 is our master. 01 is our master. Okay, and here we would give in the dollar server variable. Okay, by doing that we would say that either connect to this server or connect to that server based on a business logic. Does that make sense? I mean, are you all understanding why would we need like multiple servers and where we would actually do this kind of a process? uh, are you all there? Yes, no?
Yeah.
Or did I confuse you all, or is something a little too complex, or did I go through something very quickly?
She did master and slave here, but then, yeah.
Yeah, so okay, so I mean, other than the names, okay, do you all understand why we might need two servers?
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay,
get.
yeah, so master and slave are the terms that people use in software development. So master database would actually be like the database which we keep for doing the writes. Okay, so any writes, inserts, updates and deletes happen on the master database, while only selects happen on the slave database. It's a little blurry. Can you just say like if one server is down? Yeah,
Sure,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, see, that's another way of looking at it, but that is a little expensive given that you'll only use one just if the other is down. But yeah, I mean that is another way of looking at it. Yeah, so that's just
So if
another
slave
backup
is
server.
down, you mean to say that master can do the write and the read?
I technically wouldn't like that The reason again is, so we have talked about indexes. Did we talk about indexes in MySQL? Um, okay, so we talked about primary index, right? Primary key, and then we talked about foreign key. Then we talked about composite key. Okay, so what are all these three things? These three things are indexes. Okay, the next question is going to be, what do indexes do? Indexes actually make index the data, obviously. Okay, and then what happens is, whatever data that we are looking for, the column, since there is an index on the column, if we are using the column in a where section, in a where query, we would actually retrieve the data fast. One downside of an index is it obviously increases the write time, because the first thing that happens is we would have to write the data to a table. Now, since there is an index on the column, we'll also have to write the data to something different. Okay, in this case what happens is, real time writes are very expensive. Okay, they can become very expensive. So what we would do is, we would actually say that write this data to a different database. Okay, and take 3 seconds or 5 seconds, or like max of 8 to 10 seconds of time, and rewrite the data to my read server. Okay, so on the write server we wouldn't have any indexes, but on the read server we would have all the indexes. Okay, so the read server would obviously be of a better hardware when compared to write, which is taking a lot of reads at once. Okay, and would actually create a job which actually writes the data to the slave server at leisure. Okay, since it has better hardware, it handles it in a better way. But I mean, this is the architecture and infrastructure stuff that I don't want you all to worry about at this point. The only thing that I mean, this was actually in response to your question, is to understand that if you want to connect to a remote server, you just give in the server name, and if there is a different port, you'll give in the port name, or the port number. That Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, perfect. So other than that, so MySQL connection, it's a simple thing. Other than that, do you all understand how do you all run a query and get the data out?
Yeah, do connection, select DB, write query, and then close off. Okay, got it.
Perfect. So now we have actually looked at MySQL's fetch object. Okay. Now let's actually use this data, and like let's actually print it out to um, yeah, let's actually do another example where we would say we would actually are passing in some data. Okay, let's say where id is equal to $id. Okay, and let's actually say uh, that we are passing in the id from say like an input button. Okay, yeah, let's actually say we are passing in the id from an input from an input box. Okay, so let's close this up. Let's say vi db1.html, and let's say html uh, we wouldn't need head, but okay, we would need body. Let's have a form, and let's say names not required, method, get is the method by default, but let's mention it, action is db1.php. Okay, and let's say, let's close the form here. Okay, yeah, let's have a input button. Input type is equal to, oh, we need a text box. Text name is equal to user id, and then let's actually close the form up by form with a submit button. Let's say submit value is equal to submit. Yeah, okay. So again, this is a basic, very simple form. All we are doing is we are saying that take a text input, click submit, and on submit send the text input over to db1.php file. And what does db1.php file do? It takes the text input, which is going to be a user ID, and queries the database. Okay, simple enough. Now let's actually modify our db1.php file to look for that specific data. And let's say $server is, oh wow, score. Do you all follow Premier League? Anybody? I don't. I guess I've asked you all again. You don't follow. Never mind. Okay, so this one is going to be local host, right? And I spelled this wrong. So server is local host. Yeah. The next one obviously is going to be the ID. Okay, is going to be $_get. $_get. We are passing in this thing, so it has to be user ID. And just for consistency, let's actually rename this as user ID and rename this as user ID too. Okay, consistency. Nice. Now, yeah, it makes sense. Now let's actually go to the browser. Let's say localhost slash training slash, hang on, um, let's actually say localhost. What, let's see what happens. So it looks like I've modified something. Oh, you know what, we wouldn't need training. Yeah, we already have a virtual host, so we can use this one. So it's a db manipulations, and we'll set db1.html, right? So here let's enter 1 and let's hit submit and let's see what happens. So I have a error in the else. Oh, you know what? Yeah. So let's actually say that. So we would have to make sure that we actually open up an if and have a single line. The single line shouldn't be a comment. The single line has to be PHP. If not, it will throw an error. But this time it should work. Undefined variable data call. Okay, so let's see what is a data call. What is a data underscore call? Um, Undefined variable on line 4. Oh yeah, let's also say dollar data call is equal to read. Okay, and yeah, see, there we go, we are saying 1. Okay, we get the first guy. Now oh, then we say 2, we get the second guy. Then we say 3 and we get the third guy, so on. Okay, so fancy enough, we actually are making a connection between all the three different suspects. Okay, the first thing is obviously the client, okay, which is the browser, okay, which would be this guy, okay. From the client side application, which is a .html application or a web page, we are saying submit, okay. What PHP does is it actually goes to the database, okay, which is a different component altogether, okay, and we are fetching the data from the database and we are returning it back to PHP. And the best part is when you actually look at the page source, this itself again is uh, HTML again. So PHP again is written in HTML. So we pretty much have completed a complete cycle in web development, right? Because we actually are taking the data from HTML, sending it to Apache. Apache sends it to PHP, okay, which is the server side program. The server side program does some kind of business logic and gets the data from the database. Then the server side program takes the database, the output from the database, sends it back to Apache, and Apache returns the response. Okay, yeah. So Apache returns the response, and we actually are getting the HTML page at the end. Okay, so we have completed one cycle. So this is pretty much like the basic stuff that we can do with PHP and MySQL. Okay, are there any questions with the complete cycle?
No, I'm good.
Perfect. Now we can actually take this to the next step, okay, where we would say let us post the information where um, now how many let's say how many users do we have. So let's actually split it horizontally. Let's say MySQL purchases. Let's say select star from users. So how many users do we have? We have three users. Now let's actually add a user. Okay, how do we add a user? Um, oh yeah, how do we add a user? Obviously, we would need. Let's actually begin with the requirements. To add a user, we would need three values because the ID is generated by the database, right? It's increment. It's an auto increment column. So all you would need are the first name, the last name, and the address. Now, how would we enter the address? How do we enter these details? So one way of handling it would be to say that, okay, since I already know what I want to enter, I'll write a PHP script. But the other way to complete the whole cycle is going to be building a form, okay, where we can actually we can actually enter the information directly and hit a submit button, and on submit button we would be adding the user to the database. From there, when we come back to the a different form, which is a, it's not a form but a different page, where we would say get users. At that point we should be able to see all the users in the database. So there are two things here. One is a add user form and the other one is a get users form. Did you all understand the requirement here? Add user and get users forms.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's actually create the um, yeah. So let's actually create the MySQL, no, not MySQL, uh, PHP and HTML for these two functionalities. Now let's say since DB is not intuitive, let's say add user dot HTML. Oh yeah. So let's actually copy, since we already have this as a form, to add user.html. Okay, let's actually close this guy up. We'll say vi is this, I mean, is this legible? I mean, the add user.html form and all these three windows, or is it?
Yeah, I can see them.
Okay, perfect. Since you all are good, let's actually build a basic add user form, and in the head, let's actually get a little fancy and add a title to it, and let's say add user. Okay, just a fun trivia thing to keep in mind, that a title is always used by a search engine, so it is always good to have titles on the web page. Okay, so for SEO, this is a big win. Add user.php. Okay, and then here, so let's actually start by modifying this to add user to make it a little more intuitive, and you can get rid of this guy. And actually, let's actually close this up for more real estate. Yeah, better. So let's actually open up a table and close the table. Let's open up a row. See, if it were Sublime Text, it would actually close it by itself. So that's one win with Sublime Text. So let's actually add a label. Add a label. So we'll have to specify the label name. First name. The label is first name. TD. And another table data cell to add our input element. Input type is equal to text. Name is equal to first name. Okay, let's close this up, and let's actually come here. Let's actually copy this row, given that this is what we'll do for the next two. Let's actually paste it. Okay, so we have three rows now. Okay, so the second row obviously is going to be the last name. Oh yeah, I mean, Munjal, normally we take a break at 2:30, and the reason that we are going forward without a break is that this will be like a 2 hour to 2 hour 15-minute session for like the next 1.5 weeks. Okay, on weekends, given that Pooja has to leave at 3 o'clock. Yeah, 3 o'clock, not 3:15. So it'll be like a 2 hour session for like the for today, tomorrow, and the next week. Okay, long story short, we do not have a break and we'll end at 3 o'clock. So let's actually rename this guy over here to last name, and the last one has to be an address. Address. And let's copy this guy, paste it. Yeah, so now since you all are HTML experts, tell me, how should I handle this row where I have one element against these rows where you all have two elements.
Come again?
So
Hi.
these rows have two table data cells, right? So first name label, and then I have a first name input text. But in this row I only have one table data cell, okay, and I want to make sure that this table row has two data cells. But since I only have one data cell, how do I get it to extend over to two data cells?
Add padding.
Add padding? No.
And I
Come
didn't
on.
get your question.
You didn't get my question? Okay. So what kind of padding do you want me to add? So let's see what your answer is. Pooja, what kind of padding do you want me to add? Hmm. So what we'll have to
Hmm.
do is
Yeah.
we'll have to use, yeah, what were you going to say, Pooja?
No, I didn't say anything. Like, what kind of padding meaning? I mean,
I mean, you
oh, this
said
is
that.
a body, right? Okay.
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, never mind.
Got that.
So we'll use call span.
Combine two columns, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll say call span is equal to 2 since you have two columns. Okay. So so let's quickly take a look at the form. So we actually let's actually extend so that we have more. Yeah, we can see the whole script. Perfect. So we are creating a HTML page. Okay, the HTML page has a title that says that this is a add user form, and just for a better user experience, let's make it clear that this is an add user form. Okay, and then we have a form which actually allows the users to add a new user, and to add a new user we actually would need the first name, the last name, and the address. And on click of the submit button, the data is posted, okay, via the HTTP headers or request headers to db add user.php file. Okay, so now let's actually close the database console here, and let's get into db manipulations. Yeah, so let's say vi add user.php because that is the file that you're posting it to. You know what, let's actually close this. Let's copy db1.php and rename it as add user.php. Right, so I'll have to be a root user to do that. Let's copy db1.php to add user.php. Here add user.php. Now let me get rid of this garbage. Um, and I wouldn't be getting this data, but what I'll be getting are the first name is going to be dollar underscore post. We did do post and get, right? Just a random question. Dollar underscore get and dollar underscore post.
We did. We did.
We did, okay. So since we have done it, we will say, yeah, the first thing is first underscore name. Let's copy this and paste it. Let's say last name, address, last name. Now, I actually want you all to wear your database experts hat and tell me what should be the query be for adding a new user. Here, the data that we are getting is the first name, the last name, and the address. Anybody? Okay, but make sure that you all try these out. It is going to be a bumpy ride if you all do not try this out. Users, we'll mention the column name because we're not giving all the columns. We'll say first name. Hang on, so let me actually double check horizontally. Oh, I should have done vertically. Okay, so let's split it vertically. Let's say, so yeah, sudo dash SQL should be used online purchases start from select start from users. So F name, it's not first name. Okay, so you have to be careful. F name, L name, and address. Okay, and then we'll do values, and here values is going to be something like that. Okay, so we'll have to make sure that we perform the string concatenation correctly. Okay, but one thing to keep in mind is when we are using a double quote, we can actually put these in directly. Okay, so we can do this: first name, last name, and address. Let me actually close this up so we have more real estate for you all to take a look at the script. And let me, yeah, close this up too. Don't need this. Okay, and the last thing was address. So values is dollar address, right? And since we are only sending the data to the database, all we would have to do is we would just have to make sure that uh, the MySQL query is executed. That's it. We wouldn't have to do any fetch or anything. Okay, fetch object or fetch array or anything. Okay, so now, or let's actually do that. Okay, there is a function called MySQL num rows or MySQL affected rows. So let's actually add that to the example. MySQL affect. See, affected rows is something that we would use if we are updating something. But for inserts, let's see what is another thing. So MySQL num rows. What does this guy do? Get number of rows in a result. So we can actually, or let's actually take a look at MySQL affected rows too. The result in, yeah, let's actually do this. Okay, let's actually see how that functions. Yeah, we would just have to pass in the resource. That's it, which would be this guy. Okay. Um, Here it does say that we have to pass in the connection info, but here they are not passing it. Yeah, never mind. So let's actually use this example to get the data out. Okay. So we'll say echo num rows affected are, say, MySQL affected rows. Okay. Now, so let's actually verify that the PHP syntax is fine. PHP minus L add user dot PHP. Perfect. So there are no syntax errors, which is good. Now, let's actually go to our browser and let's actually repress this guy with add user. Again, the good thing about title is it actually shows up here. Okay, which is used for SEO purposes. So now let's actually enter a username. Okay, so we'll say Jane Do she lives at 3325 BA. Okay, let's say add user. We don't have db add user.php file. Why don't we have that? Oh, so it's just add user. Okay, let's actually go in and say add user.html. Let's rename it to the right file. Add. Okay, let's actually go back. Okay, and since we are actually going back, the browser persists those values. Okay, so that's why they are pre-filled. Then we'll say add user. Oh, you know what? The browser actually persists the whole DOM, so we'll have to refresh it. Okay, so we have refreshed it now, and just to verify that the form has changed. Okay, it says add user.php. Nice. Okay, so now let's again click add user, and the data says that, oh, you know what, it has to be underscore. Yeah, it has to be underscore. The add user.php. Hang on, where did, yeah, sudo bash vi add user.php, and so I'm missing the underscores. Now let's again go back. Let's add user. So now we have added the user successfully because the number of rows affected are 1. And now let us actually quickly verify that the change is successful. So for that we'll do mysql minus u root minus p admin. We'll say use online purchases. Let's just select star from users, and the user is not here. Perfect. Interesting stuff. So did I put it into a wrong table or what? So I have insert into users, first name, last name. Then why would it say that it affected 2 rows? Hmm. Because let's actually take a look at this part here. It's missing insert into. Let's actually try that out. Insert into users. Uh, F name, L name, test, test, test. Okay, let's select star from users. So this guy is actually there. Nice. Let's actually say delete from users where id is equal to 4. Okay, so these are the 3 users that we have. Now the bigger question is, when the number of rows affected is 1 and the query happened here, why aren't they showing up in the browser? Hmm. Do you all, I mean, see any issues or something? Ah, so this is what we have to do. We have to see. Okay, so let me actually try. I don't know. So let's actually see that kind of. Okay, but let me actually try. See, MySQL is particular about this part. Let's actually close this way. Exit, exit. Okay. Okay, so when we say select star, okay, so we still have 3 users. So let's actually go back. So we have this one. Let's say add user. It again says number of rows affected are 1. Actually, there we go. Yeah, so the problem was MySQL again. It is very particular about the syntax. We have to add a quote to the values that we are sending in. If we do not add a quote to the values that we are sending in, it doesn't consider it as a value, as an incoming value. Okay, so yeah, so this is how we'll have to insert data into the users table or into any other table. Okay, so let me quickly ask you all if there are any questions at this point with the insert script.
No, sir, I am good. I don't know. For now, I'm good at least.
Okay, okay. So yeah, tomorrow what we'll do is we'll actually work on getting all the users out of the table. So once we add a user, we shouldn't have to come to this console to verify that the user has been added. We should have another screen which would show all the existent users in the database. Okay,
Okay.
but again, keep in mind, I know this is easier said than done, but make sure that you all try out everything that is here, given that
Give me this week, Sai. I won't be able to get much done, even I would like to. But
yeah,
next week onwards, I promise,
yeah,
I will put in double effort.
yeah, no issues, but keep in mind that from here on the information would actually be snowballing. So yeah, so
Yeah,
yeah, that's it from my side.
that's what is a little worrying to me. I mean, if I start catching up like next week, would it be like too much for me to? But you know what? Anyways, I'll backtrack with the videos, so that'll help a lot.
Okay, yeah,
All right.
you too, Munjal, make sure that you try it out and come up with questions, because from here on we'll actually be getting into more advanced concepts of PHP, MySQL, and the dynamic side of data. Okay, so yeah, so that's it for today. Let's will the next session would be at 1 p.m. tomorrow. Uh, See you all tomorrow.
Thanks, Sai. Bye.